All right, we are live and recording. Hope you guys are having a great day so far. Very quickly, before we go ahead and get started, I decided that we are going to be putting on a step challenge for the month of July. So for this step challenge, I'll release like the details of exactly, how to win and how to go about participating, here pretty soon to everybody who ends up entering. But the step challenge, we will be giving away over $200 worth of prizes. This is something that I've done for one-on-one clients in the past. We've done step challenges periodically and has really kind of ramped up people's progress just from like having some motivation to move around a little bit more and to make getting your steps in, going on walks, getting outside and all that stuff, and just being more active, making it more fun. So if you want to participate in the step challenge, go ahead and comment below on this live video, comment me, and I will send you over the details on how you can join the step challenge. And if you have anybody else, like a friend or somebody who you think would want to participate too, which would make it a lot of fun, you guys being able to do this together, motivate each other, definitely tag them in the post too. That way we can get more people in on this and get a huge amount of people to participate, and that makes it more fun too. So just wanted to start off with that. But next, I wanted to dive into this topic for today, and I don't even have any notes on here, so I'm going to kind of riff a little bit. But this was something I was talking to a client earlier this week about, because she is going into more of a longer term maintenance phase, not like super long, like multiple, like 6 months worth of maintenance, at least right now, but just maybe like 1 to 2 months to kind of finish off the summer. And with this maintenance phase, she hasn't been perfect with her calorie range, right? We have a calorie range to aim for that's going to be around maintenance for her, and she hasn't been necessarily perfect with that. Some days have been a little bit higher, some days have been a little bit lower. She's been traveling more, all this stuff that makes it a little bit difficult to be in, more of a precise range as far as calories. And I was talking to her about these two things that as long as she consistently does these two things, she's going to make progress in some way. And I don't think a lot of people like realize this, or maybe they've heard it a little bit, but haven't really internalized it. But once you realize these two things that you can consistently do to always make some kind of progress with your body composition goals, whether it's you want to long-term get leaner, long-term lose body fat, long-term get more muscle tone. If you do these two things, you will make progress in some way, as long as you do them consistently. So the two things that we can do to ensure that no matter where our calories are at, really, we are going to make some type of progress overall with our body composition is, number one, being consistent with your protein intake, and number two, being consistent with your strength training or lifting routine, along with, obviously pushing yourself in your workouts, pushing yourself in your lifts, getting close to failure with every set, really trying to progressively overload, meaning every single week trying to add either reps or weight to, whatever you're doing for your sets. But if we do those two things consistently, no matter where our calories are at, we're going to make progress in some way. Now, this might sound a little bit confusing at first, because obviously I've talked a lot about, which is true, calories are the most important thing for fat loss. But when it comes to changing your body composition, calories aren't the only thing that matter when it comes, or not, shouldn't say calories. I should say fat loss isn't the only thing that matters when it comes to changing your body composition. Another part of changing your body composition that matters is your muscle mass. If you want to get leaner, if you want to get toned, if you want to look more defined, if you want more of a shape to your body, you want your, glutes to look bigger, or you want your arms to be more shaped, or whatever it is, you want your midsection to look slimmer, you need muscle mass on your frame, and probably more muscle mass than what you have. That's just kind of the reality. Unless you've been, consistently lifting, training for multiple years in a row, really consistently. If not, you probably do need some more muscle mass on your frame. Now, the reason why, if you just at least hit your protein and consistently lift when you're in this kind of more maintenance period, no matter where your calories end up, if you're traveling, if you're on vacation or whatever, you will see some type of progress because number one is if you end up having days where your calories are lower, like when you're traveling and not tracking and you accidentally, don't eat enough, as long as you hit your protein and you're consistently lifting, working out, you're going to probably lose a little bit of body fat on that day. You're eating in a calorie deficit on the day, your body will overall burn a little bit more fat than what it stores on that day. So there's going to be a little bit of like a dip in the amount of body fat you have. It might not be visibly noticeable in just a day, probably won't, but it will happen. Physiologically, that's what happens. Now, if you, let's say, overeat on accident one day, but you're still hitting your protein and you are still, consistently sticking to your 3 or 4 or 5 day a week lifting program and pushing yourself in that, a lot of those extra calories that you eat on that day that you overeat are going to be used to recover better from the workout that you had maybe a day or two ago. It's going to be used to kind of fuel recovery. And then if you have a workout the next day, a lot of those extra calories are going to be stored as, especially if they're carbohydrates, they're going to be stored as glycogen in your muscle, which can be used to fuel your performance the next day and cause you to have an even better workout than what you would expect. Now, obviously, if you really overdo the calories, you're going to get those two things. You're going to recover better and you're going to, fuel your next workout's performance. But, if you really overdo the calories, you probably will gain a little bit of body fat on that day. Now, it won't be noticeable visibly. Maybe you might feel a little bit more bloated, but that's a different story than actually visibly having, and being able to see more body fat on your frame. But, if you really overdo the calories, you're going to see maybe a little bit of body fat gain, but you're also going to get the benefit of recovering better and having a better workout and even building a little bit of muscle. Now, are you going to build a ton of muscle on one day? No, but will the shift of how much muscle you're breaking down versus the amount of muscle you're building shift towards building a little bit more on that day or two that you do overeat? Yeah. And now you have this scenario where, okay, worst case scenario, if I'm eating enough protein to recover from my workouts and kind of stimulate building muscle, or at least keeping my muscle, and I'm staying consistent with my lifting plan to stimulate building muscle or at least keeping my muscle. If I'm eating less calories than what I burn, I'm going to lose some body fat. If I eat a little bit more calories than what I burn, I'm going to be putting my body in a state where I'm more likely to put on more muscle too. And this is very clear when you think of a broader long-term sense with how bodybuilders or even bikini competitors, other fitness models, even natural bodybuilders, I'm not even just talking about people who you see, in magazines that are really juiced up on steroids. I'm talking about natural bodybuilders or bikini competitors who have that fitness type look that you are probably aiming for. They go through purposeful periods where they purposely eat more calories than what they burn to put their body in a better state to build muscle. Because essentially your body is always breaking down muscle and rebuilding it back up. It's always going through what's called protein breakdown and protein muscle synthesis. So it's always breaking down a little bit of muscle and then building it back up, as you eat more protein throughout the day, and, you have your strength training too. That's going to help you to have a little bit more protein synthesis or making of the muscle protein versus the breakdown. So the protein intake you're eating is going to stimulate building muscle, or at least keeping the muscle you have. The lifting is also another variable that's going to stimulate keeping the muscle you have or building the muscle. And the calorie intake dictates what state or how likely it is that you're going to have the fuel and resources to actually build muscle or only just keep it around. If you're eating at calorie maintenance, or if you're eating below your maintenance in a deficit in a fat loss phase, the chances of you actually building muscle aren't that high unless you're a beginner and just getting started with lifting weights. But let's assume, you've been lifting weights for, 6 months to a year now. If you're in a fat loss phase, in a calorie deficit, or you're eating at maintenance, you're probably not going to build a lot of muscle after that. But if you are in a calorie surplus, eating more calories than what you burn, the likelihood of you building muscle is much higher. And that is why, like I said, these fitness people, these natural bodybuilders, even the people you see on the fitness magazines and fitness models, so many of them go through purposeful periods of eating in a calorie surplus because that puts their body in a better state to actually build muscle. This is where the whole concept of, okay, I'm bulking in the winter or fall, and then I'm cutting in the spring or summer. Like that's where that whole thing has come about. Now, you don't have to do some kind of extreme bulk where, you gain 30 or 40 pounds in the winter and then cut it all off. I don't recommend that. We want, tons of research has come out that just a small calorie surplus, so eating just a little bit more than the amount of calories you burn, and gaining weight a little bit slowly over time, like let's say maybe gaining a pound per month on average, is perfectly fine and well enough to achieve like a lot of muscle gain if you're pushing yourself hard in the gym and eating enough protein and you have a good workout routine. But the whole point of this is if you end up accidentally, like if you're aiming for maintenance and you end up accidentally eating less calories than what you burn, as long as you have the protein there and the consistent lifting weights there, you're going to probably lose mostly body fat just in that snapshot of a day. In worst case scenario, if you end up overeating your calories instead of hitting maintenance, worst case scenario is you're going to build a little bit of muscle, build a little bit of strength because you have all those extra fuel sources in, as long as you are lifting weights consistently and eating enough protein. Where people go wrong with both sides of the equation, or where people end up seeing like losing progress, is when they end up under eating significantly, whether it's purposely or unintentionally, and they also undereat protein, and then they also stop their lifting routine. Like if you, and this isn't just like a week, like if you go on a week vacation, a week is not going to like make or break your results by any means. Like a week of low protein and a week of not lifting weights isn't going to do it. But I'm talking about like if you find yourself like just unmotivated to track calories for, a few weeks at a time, even a month, and feel like you've fallen off the wagon when it comes to tracking your food. The big downfall that people have is that they end up losing all these habits, especially they end up stop eating enough protein and they end up stopping their lifting routine. And they end up just not tracking their food, eating whatever, eating a really low protein diet, being really inconsistent with their workouts. And that's why like they end up losing a lot of progress. The calorie intake part of it does play a role, right? Like if you, have achieved a certain body composition and now you're eating way too low of calories or way too high, yeah, that's going to impact your body composition some. But the two biggest things that really are detrimental to keeping the progress you've made is that when you end up just like not logging your food for 3 or 4 weeks at a time, not going to the gym, is that you're not lifting, so you're not stimulating, keeping that muscle around, so you're losing muscle. And then you're also not eating enough protein, so you're losing muscle there too. And then, the downside on top of that is if you end up not tracking your food for 3 or 4 weeks and you actually end up overeating calories, but under eating protein and not lifting weights, now you're in a scenario where you're eating more calories than what you burn. So you're more likely to gain some kind of weight, whether it's muscle mass or fat tissue, but you're not eating the protein to stimulate some of that being muscle tissue gain, and you're not lifting weights to stimulate some of that being muscle tissue gain. So now when you go that month of overeating plus eating less protein and not lifting weights, now like mostly like 100% of that weight gain that you see over that month's time when you're off track and not tracking your food and overeating, 100% of that is probably going to be body fat gain. Whereas if you at least still ate enough protein and still strength trained and push yourself in the gym, even if you went way overboard with your calories for the entire month, 50% of that weight gain might only be body fat. And then 50% of that might be muscle mass that you've gained. So by eating enough protein and lifting weights, regardless of where your calorie intake is at, it's going to put your body in a state where if you undereat on accident, you're still going to keep your muscle mass around and strength, and you're still going to at least keep like that muscle tone that you have underneath that body fat. And then if you, on the other hand, on the other extreme side, if you overeat significantly for a month straight, as long as you're hitting your protein and you're strength training and pushing yourself in the gym, sure, you probably will gain some body fat if you're really overdoing the calories for a month, but you're also in this state where your body is likely to put on a little bit of muscle. And people intentionally put themselves in this state to improve their body composition long term. Maybe in the short term, after a month of, eating tons of calories, even though you're eating enough protein and lifting, maybe after a month of that, you look at your body composition, you're like, I feel like it got worse. But you've also built a little bit of muscle underneath. So when you go into your next fat loss phase, trim things up a little bit, go into a little bit of a cut, you're going to reveal that extra muscle you've built. And overall, long term, it's going to make your body composition look quote unquote better in your eyes, probably, if your goal is to have a more tone, physique, more shaped physique in that. So when, like, worst case scenario, if you're ever in a period where you just like take a break, a long break from tracking your food, and you're just really unmotivated from being in a fat loss phase, even if you still have like more body fat you need to lose, at baseline, keep your protein intake like consistent. Like, no matter what you do, say, whether or not I hit my calorie goal or not, I'm going to hit my protein intake. And whether or not I, am hitting my calorie intake or even hitting my step goal, I'm at least going to still continue going to the gym and pushing myself in those lifting workouts. So at worst, if I'm eating less than what I burn on accident, and that's not my goal, I'm at least going to maintain, my muscle mass or most of it. And at worst, on the other extreme side, even if I overeat on calories, at least I'll probably have a little bit of muscle that I've built, as long as I'm still pushing myself in the gym and still hitting my protein intake. So hopefully this kind of makes sense, why those two things are so important to have at baseline. Now, like I said, when it comes to fat loss, and if you want to like consistently lose fat, predictably lose fat in a controllable way where okay, every single week I'm chipping away this much, calories are the most important thing. But when you have periods where you do like fall off track with tracking your calories, and you're having more of an extended period of time where you're just not motivated to like stick to a fat loss phase or track your calories, every single day, at least hit your protein in your workouts. And if you do that, you'll at least make it to the other side of this unmotivated phase while having still at least maintaining your progress, or maybe even, a little bit of muscle build to gain, like, would you rather gain, a few pounds in a month because you really overate and all of it being, 100% fat gain, or would you have still stuck with, your protein intake and, hitting your workouts at least, and have some percentage of that at least be muscle mass gain, which is a positive. And like I said, people purposely put themselves in those phases to purposely build muscle. So I'm not saying to not focus on calories, because that is the most important variable we want to, manipulate, with protein being the close second when it comes to body composition. But if you are in a scenario where you're not tracking calories because you just, feel like you really need a break from tracking calories, or for whatever reason, like, have your protein intake be consistent at least, and at least do your strength training workouts and push yourself and, all those workouts every single day. And if you do those two things, you will make some kind of progress either way, whether it's unintentionally losing body fat, or whether it's unintentionally maintaining your body fat level, or, maybe it's increasing body fat a little bit if you're overeating, but at least you're building some muscle along with it. So hopefully this was eye-opening. Let me know, like I said, comment below if you want in on the step challenge. Giving away $200 worth, or over $200 worth of cash prizes. So definitely let me know, comment below if you want to join. And I will see you guys in the next one.